Hey, so do you ever feel like you know that there's this thing called social media, which you should be able to use to help grow your business, find clients, customers? Sometimes you might have done that effectively, but it doesn't feel consistent. Sometimes it feels icky. Sometimes it feels slow. Like, what the hell is happening? Everyone's just ignoring me. I feel like I'm shouting into the void sometimes, and then other times something blows up. Sometimes things are popular, but you don't get any actual clients from them or leads or any indication that someone wants to become a client. It takes ages, feels like a chore. Well, that's what we are going to tackle in this video. What we want to do here is to, instead of all of the above, we want to be able to get the attention from people who really are interested in working with us. We want it to feel like a fast and fun process that feels actually great to do, not like a necessary evil, which a lot of marketing and sales is for a lot of people. This is something that it certainly felt like for me, even though I was a marketer. I was a freelance writer, then copywriter, head of marketing for an agency, did this a lot for 8 years on the side of being a professional actor. And I have been on one hell of a journey with all the things I've just said. So let's dive into what we want to do instead to get out of all of that stuff and get to where we actually want to be. Okay, great. So what's the goal? Let's put that right in the middle. We want to get 3 hand-raised posts a week that print leads. By that we mean people who are predisposed, pre-sold, who want to actually work with us and want to find out more about that. So this process is about creating 3 posts a week on our organic platforms of any kind: social media, YouTube, email. You can do this anywhere where you have any kind of audience. It doesn't need to be a big audience either. And the goal is to straighten out this process that is going to let us do that 3 times a week consistently, and for it to consistently produce pre-sold leads who meet the criteria of making us feel like this is actually worth it. So what are the things that actually get in the way of us doing that? Why aren't you doing it already? Why is someone not actually getting this done? Well, the first problem is that a lot of people dip their toes in doing this kind of thing, and then they get ignored, and then they feel like it doesn't work, or they feel like it's a failure each time they do it, which is just an incredibly unpleasant experience. The next problem is that actually getting this done is a very slow and painful process. And the third problem is that it just feels icky. It feels salesy, and that doesn't feel aligned, doesn't feel like who you are. It feels like you have to take who you are when you're being authentic, truthful, yourself, comfortable, and you have to put that version of you to one side. You have to disconnect from it and put it to one side so that you can do the necessary evils involved in marketing, getting sales, getting people to engage so that then they might want to become a customer. A lot of people just disengage from this process full stop and say, right, well, if what I'm offering is good, then people will find it. They kind of go referrals only, or don't engage with anything because they feel like all marketing and sales is going to make them feel icky, it's going to be slow and painful, and it's not going to be worth it because they'll just get ignored. No wonder people struggle to do stuff like this consistently. What then do we want to get to if we're going to be experiencing the ideal state that's going to let us do 3 hand-raised posts every week that get leads consistently? Well, the first one, instead of being ignored, what we want to be experiencing is that you can get attention from your best fit clients, the people who are most likely to get great results from working with you. We want them to just whip their heads around every time that you post something and be like, what's that? I need to pay attention to that. What's that? That sounds like it's for me. So The next thing that we want to do is, instead of feeling like this whole process is slow and painful, we want it to feel fast and enjoyable. And more than that, we want it to feel ideally meaningful, like it's something that we actually get something from doing, rather than is just a chore that is, even if it's fast and fun, it's trivial. It's still not like a core part of our self-expression, which is the business that we're creating. So instead of feeling icky and salesy, we want this to feel like authentic self-expression. Basically, we want this to be a practice of articulating and expressing your truth. So how do we actually do this? Let's look at the actual actions, the projects, the micro actual stepping stones on the way that we need to do to get these three outcomes. The attention from people who would be great clients, get the process feeling fast, enjoyable, and meaningful, and make it feel like an authentic self-expression of our truth. So to get attention from best clients, we have to focus on using what I call now hooks. So everyone knows a ton of social media hooks, but the problem is that often these are deferred in the timeline that you're speaking to be later down the line, and we want to focus on the now, because that is where attention is easiest to get. You don't have to do any of this stuff, by the way. This is what makes it easier in my experience, but you shouldn't take my word for it. You should experiment in ways that you enjoy experimenting, and you should find out for yourself. But I would suggest that your experiments might want to start assuming that some of this is true, and then wherever you're curious to disprove it, by all means, please do it and tell me the results. I would love nothing more than to find a whole trail of evidence and experiments of people going against what I'm suggesting here, and then sending me excited results being like, look, I didn't like what you said about this, and I did the opposite, and it's working great. So the second thing that we need for getting attention from people who will be really good clients is Pierce posts. Now, Pierce is a concept from gaming, and I'm a very big gamer, but it's a really good way of describing how many layers of relevance you can stack with these hand-raising posts. The more layers of relevance, the more Pierce each post actually has, and the easier and better quality attention you're going to get from better fit clients, prospective clients. So how do we make this process fast, enjoyable, and meaningful? And by the way, I am going to come back round and actually get really down into the detailed specifics of how we do now hooks, how we do Pierce posts, what exactly I mean, so that you'll be able to, by the end of this, you'll be ready and raring to just like shoot off and go get this done. So fast, enjoyable, and meaningful. We want to get our mise en place. So this is, if you're familiar with cooking, I really like listening to reading books about, watching videos on cooking. I love cooking. I absolutely love food, and I actually love the process of cooking. But I enjoy it more if I don't go, right, I've got 10 minutes, I need to make this complicated pasta dish. I don't even know if I've got all the ingredients. I'll stick the pasta on. This is what I used to do as I have ADHD. I'll start the pasta, and then I'll figure out what the next step is, what the next ingredient is, and then I'll start chopping garlic. Oh no, the pasta's cooked, and I've only just chopped the garlic, and there's like 7 other ingredients. That is painful, and it's slow. And one of the best things I learned about letting myself enjoy cooking the most is to have everything in its place, which is what mise en place means. Which means that we're not going to turn up with like 6 minutes to spare and try and do an hour's work of marketing work just out of guilt in that 6 minutes and like just dump something out. We want to get all the ingredients ready so that we can turn up and actually enjoy the process without it feeling stressful, slow, painful. So the other thing we need to do to get this done is to have our connection space lined up. Again, I'll go into this in a moment. So how about feeling like doing these 3 hand-raised posts doesn't feel icky and salesy, but actually feels like authentic self-expression of truth? First thing is we need to connect it to our mission. And the main thing that you need to understand here is marketing. Your marketing strategy is your mission. I really like a bunch of really excellent marketing people because I feel very connected and aligned with certain parts of their philosophy that they approach this whole thing with. And one of those people is Mike Killen. Really like Mike Killen. Highly recommend checking out his stuff. He focuses on helping marketers and people who help clients by building funnels for them, especially. But one of the things that he says is that your marketing strategy shouldn't be a list of KPIs and statistics that you're trying to hit, like views, clicks, engagement, conversion percentages, revenue. That shouldn't be the core of your marketing strategy or mission. The core of your marketing strategy and mission should be statistics about what your audience, what your ideal person that you help is actually going to get just from your marketing. So you don't have your marketing strategy as an internal tool that's about your internal metrics, about what you get. Your marketing strategy should be successful based on indications that more people are getting more of the outcomes that mean that your mission is successful. The transformation that you're here to help people with should be happening as a result of your marketing strategy. And that is an indication that your marketing is working. It's so exciting to do this. So the next thing that we need to get done for feeling like this is authentic self-expression of your truth is make the skeleton dance. And I'll come back to this and I'll explain it properly. I love this concept. I found out about it from a very edgy marketer, but I mean something slightly different from what he does, and I'll go into that in a moment. So, okay, let's break this down into specifics so you can actually, after watching this, go ahead and do it. So what the hell do I mean by now hooks and how do we get them done? Well, you want to ask the question, what do people want, or what do they want to stop, which is the things that they're frustrated about, in the next minute to 30 days as a time frame. So we're not looking like a year off, 2 years off, 3 years off, 5 years off. You can do stuff like that, and I again encourage you to break all of these suggestions. They're not rules. They are principles that tend to work and tend to be a great place to start off from. But please disprove all of these and use that as a way to collect data for yourself. But I'm going to suggest that your experiments start by asking this question. So people who I'm looking to help with this goal, this outcome, they want stuff in the next minute to 30 days, and they're frustrated by stuff in that same time frame to do with the thing that I help my clients with. What are those things? What do they really want the most, or what are they frustrated the most by within that time frame? So, for example, if someone is trying to get leads from their social media, I might think about, so what are the frustrations that they have? And I would come up with the things in red that I've written here. Being ignored, it feeling slow and painful, and it feeling like an icky thing that makes people feel salesy and like they're not able to be themselves. So those are the things that I want to use as now hooks. They are in that time frame of now. What do I want and what am I frustrated about now? And we can use them to hook people's attention. And in case, I noticed saying that felt like a slightly strange thing for me to say. Sense of just creeping ickiness there. We will dive in and add up all of these points and it will make sense when put together. But that's very useful feedback for me while making this video, this content, this training stuff, that I just noticed in my body that when I said we can use these things to hook people's attention, that there was something uncomfortable there for me as a physical sensation and experience. I'm gonna record that, and I'm going to use that as something for me to explore. Remember me saying this, I mentioned that now because it's going to come back to something that we're going to talk about in a few minutes' time. So the next thing about now hooks, what do you do after you've got these lined up? Well, we want to dive into using stories. And the reason is that these illustrate and make very present and relevant and immediate the experience that you are speaking to. The thing that you have to offer people is a tool. It will help them to deal with that frustration or that want in a way that's easier, faster, better, more enjoyable, or otherwise. So in order for them to understand that this is a thing that will help them, we need them to have an opportunity to resonate with the situation that they're in right now. That's what the number one wants and frustrations that you use as now hooks will do. And the story is then the painting of the experiential picture. Here's a snapshot. Here's a little scene that will resonate with you if this solution is for you. So there are two types of stories that you can use for this. The first is direct stories. This is the kind of story where, like I just used now, it's about me. So you've identified a want that someone has and they want it now. Let's say that want is they want to be able to get attention instead of being ignored when they post on their platform of choice. I will look for stories that are either from me being in that situation or clients being in that situation or other people who I have either helped myself or who I've heard of being in that situation. So it's directly relevant. It's happened to me or the person that the story is about. The picture being painted is literal. It's the same wants and frustrations. So those are direct stories. Those are pretty powerful and helpful because they are direct. So on platforms where there's a lot of competition and the channel is kind of crowded, so like Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, short attention spans where people are just greedy for novelty, and there are a lot of people competing for very short spans of attention. Direct stories are pretty good because they take no processing. They just land right in front of people and let them know immediately that this is literally the situation that you're in right now and you want to get change about. This is a story that's going to speak directly to that. Direct stories. Very clear. So the other type of story, you will never guess this. Indirect stories. I know. Amazing. So these are stories that aren't literally about things. They are analogy. They are metaphors they are parallel stories. So I could have said a story about, say, I once in a marketing agency, I was asked to write a blog post, a guide, and I knew that stories were really, really powerful. And I wanted to use a story to illuminate what I was talking about. And I, at that point, didn't understand the difference between direct stories and indirect stories. So for an agency who wanted an article to promote on professional channels like LinkedIn, I wrote a story that was an analogy and a metaphor that was basically a parable of an ant about B2B marketing. I thought it was great. I still think it was pretty great. I'm quite proud of it. I might actually try and dig this story up because it was pretty good. But my boss at the time, the client at the time, didn't get the indirect analogy, and so this was not deemed appropriate. This can be really, really, really wonderful and very, very powerful as an analogy, as a tool for connecting, especially if the story is exciting and has high stakes right from the get-go. That is just as good as using a direct story because it's still going to capture attention, because a compelling story with high stakes that makes us think, wait, what happened next? That's always going to be highly effective to get attention. And also, if it's personal to you, if it reveals something about you, even if it's not a direct metaphor. So I just told you that the Pierce posts, Pierce is an analogy from gaming, and that's one of my big interests. That just allows a little opportunity for someone who resonates, is curious about, or is intrigued by that, let alone them being a gamer themselves, to be like, wow, I understand, I have a little glimpse into how your brain works, what kind of things you use as metaphor, analogy. This can be very, very helpful. However, if it's for very busy channels where there's a lot of competition for attention, it can still work, but you may find that it doesn't work as quickly or directly as direct stories do. However, on other channels where you've somewhat isolated people's attention, so daily emails are a great way, or email marketing are a great place to use indirect stories now and then. If you create longer form content, say podcasts or videos or more in-depth guides, these are all places where you've secured a degree of attention, and as long as you are providing a good frequency of epiphanies and learning outcomes and entertainment, then you can definitely and would benefit from definitely mixing in indirect stories as well. Okay, so let's move on to Pierce posts. What on earth do I mean as a gamer by Pierce posts and layers of relevance? Well, in gaming, this is board games, these can be video games. Pierce is a mechanism in gaming that basically describes how many layers of a thing in that game that an action you do will affect. So, for example, you could be playing a... do you remember the big Angry Birds craze? I think that game's still going now. Great game. Did very, very well. People loved that game. But so Pierce in that game, if you don't know what I'm talking about, then you had basically a catapult on one side of the screen that you used to catapult Angry Birds across the screen and collide with various architectural structures that were housing pigs. Your goal was to knock pigs off architectural structures. So you'd use catapulted Angry Birds. So and this isn't how that game worked, but it's a great game to use as an analogy for what Pierce means. With that game, Pierce would mean how many walls, once catapulted, would an angry bird go through before it lost all momentum and just dropped down to the ground. So a high Pierce angry bird would be like you could go through 20 walls before that bird loses momentum. A low Pierce bird would be like it can't even get through one wall. It would just hit a wall and then just flop. So you could see that the more effective an angry bird is, the more Pierce it's likely to have. More Pierce means more effect on the target that you're looking to affect. So how does that relate to these hand raised posts that we're creating here? Well, I see Pierce, the number of layers that we can affect, as layers of relevance. So these are the things that your hand raised posts are going to speak to, and the more that we can touch, the more of these that we can affect, the more attention that we're going to get from that post. So the layers of relevance here might be who the person is, and you can actually break that down into even more layers of relevance. You could speak to certain ages, certain genders, certain areas of work or niche or markets. You could speak to certain specific characteristics that may be helpful for you to speak to. There are so many layers just within that you can use to get more Pierce, more layers of relevance, and you can resonate with these layers on a higher level by speaking more specifically to these characteristics, to these layers of relevance. What do they want? What frustrations do they have? And this is where it relates to the now hooks from up here that we've spoken about. What do they fear? What do they desire in the future? When are you actually putting this out there, and how does time affect this? Is it like in the next 3 days? Is it for people who want this in the next week? What's the timeline that people desire to have this outcome by? How is it going to be done? People will relate to a much higher degree if they think that the how, the journey, the mechanism that you are going to use to help them deal with this thing and get this outcome is exciting, new, more effective, more enjoyable, more interesting to them. What are you going to do it with? Are you going to say, we're going to do all of this while keeping a sense of alignment, for example, which is something that I focus on in my marketing because it's important to me, and I really like having clients for whom that matters too, as opposed to people who are like, oh yeah, I have no issue with alignment, I don't need to feel alignment, perfectly happy to lie. That's great, because then that means that I can be very specific with my layers of pierce that I'm aiming for, and aim to discourage someone who's perfectly happy lying with resonating with the stuff that I put out there, because it's much, much better if we know right up front and center, this isn't going to be a great match. What do we do it without? So without feeling like something is slow and painful, without paid advertising. These are great ways that I can add pierce to my posts and stack layers of relevance so that people who are really, really excited about not having to deal with paid ads, who are really, really excited about the prospect that marketing can feel like an act of authenticity and expression of truth, rather than having to sacrifice their own alignment and authenticity to say the necessary evils that will get them the outcomes that they want to control. This is what I mean by pierce posts, layers of relevance. So another element of this is where you actually post. So one really simple way of doing this, there's lots of ways that you can do this, but a really great way, again, I got this from Mike Killen, is to add people on your platform of choice. Say you're like, yeah, I'm going to be focused on LinkedIn here. Well, go onto LinkedIn, find groups that contain as targeted as possible clusters of people who you're looking to help, and then add people. Just connect with them. If you were doing it on Facebook, you'd send connection requests. You'd find groups on Facebook of people who are likely to be in a high need of the help that you are offering. Add them, send them friend requests. Do that frequently. Pay attention to the restrictions of that platform. One Google away from being like, how many Facebook friend requests am I allowed to send a day? LinkedIn connections am I allowed to send per day? Don't go over that. Very simple. And then start posting to your profile. You don't need to go spam in groups, of putting this stuff in groups without it being spam. But you can just stick to this and it will work very, very well if you do it in the way that we're describing and you do it consistently. So speaking of doing this consistently, the faster, more enjoyable and more meaningful we can make this, the more consistent you're going to naturally be. It's not going to be a practice of having to be disciplined. It's going to be a practice of actually looking forward to getting to do this. So, how can getting mise en place, everything in its place, like a good chef about to cook a Michelin star meal and enjoy it, how can we actually get your mise en place, everything in its place? Well, first things first is don't turn up without knowing what you're going to say and feeling like you're rubbish at communicating. That's not fair on you. That's very, very much stacking the odds against you and playing in a very unlevel pitch when you're trying to find a way to do this in a way that's fast, enjoyable, and meaningful. Instead, what I suggest you do is something like what I'm doing here. Find ways, find models, find frameworks of organizing your thoughts exactly like how I'm doing here. The way that I'm doing that, a really great way of organizing what you want to say, so all your ducks are in a row, everything is in its place before you actually start with the content, is to start with how I've done it here. In the middle, I've got a triangle, and in that triangle, I put the goal, the outcome that we are looking to create with this process that I'm offering. 3 hand raise posts a week that give you leads, pre-sold leads. So that's the goal. Around that triangle, I then put, and you can make this a square, you can make this whatever you want. With a square, you'd have 4. With a triangle, you'd have 3 blockers. So problems, what are the things that are in the way where if we dealt with those, everything would be much more likely to happen successfully to get us that outcome? I put them in red. They are being ignored, finding the process slow and painful, feeling icky or salesy about what we're actually posting. After that, around those, for each one of those blockers or problems or obstacles, we go and I've put in green, well, what do we want to be the case instead of that? If we flip that on its head, being ignored, for example, what do we want instead of that in the positive? What would mean everything was great, really exciting, and we've made huge progress towards that central goal? Well, instead of being ignored, getting attention from our best fit prospective clients, instead of it feeling slow and painful, feeling fast, enjoyable and meaningful, instead of feeling icky because it feels like kind of salesy what we're doing here, find a way of doing it where we feel authentic self-expression of our truth is what we're actually doing when we create these hand raise posts. So around that, we then put the practical actions or projects that need to happen that will mean the green things are much more likely to happen. We're experiencing momentum towards those happening. So in my case, I've put in blue, use now hooks and a system for creating high pierce posts that resonate on many different layers of relevance. Once you go through all of them, we go around again, which is what I'm doing now, in purple with the details, the actual practical details, tools and steps. Once you do this, you have a map that will help anyone become infinitely more likely of achieving that central goal, and you've got your thoughts organized in an incredibly compelling way. So I first came across this triangle model via a guy called Jason Squires, and I noticed that I would sign up for his webinars when I didn't really have much faith in webinars. I just kind of expected them to be BS, where it was just, no value imparted, nothing learned, no real value extracted from turning up to the webinar, and instead just some fluff and then a pitch. With his webinars, I found that they were the opposite. They were extremely interesting. I was thinking about them afterwards. I was actually changing my behavior and actions having attended his free webinars. And I was like, so what's happening here? What's the guy doing? And so I came across this model that he was using as the central framework with which to describe and communicate his thoughts and organize the learning outcomes, the actions, the insights, the steps, the practical steps that he was outlining on this webinar by which to achieve the goal that he promised to help people achieve with the webinar. So I started doing that. I did it in some very dumb ways, which I won't go about here, that just took me an unbelievable, genuinely unbelievable number of hours to do, because I thought I had to put it all together on like a slideshow where each slide was like a stop motion animation where I added like one frame at a time, a new word or a new element or a new box. Unbelievable. I feel nothing but pride and compassion and a small amount of pity for me back then doing it in that extraordinarily labor-intensive way. But I did it because it was actually enjoyable and meaningful to get my thoughts in order, to actually be able to understand, okay, and feel that sense of confidence that this is great. I've got a map. I can refer to this map, and it's going to stick with me, and it's going to help me always be ready to talk about what I do and how I help people and the process I suggest going through. The reason is because it's stacked with the why, and then the what, and then the what to avoid, and then the action points to do, and then the detail of how to do that those specific actions. So what else do we do when we are getting everything in its place? Mise en place. Well, we need to give ourselves an element of grace with this. Perfectionism is incredibly unhelpful. Instead, what we want to do is to cultivate a sense of wonder, an attitude of wonder, of curiosity, of exploration and experimentation. This will come up again in a moment, but we want to have a frame which we view this by, which is, I'm going to test a hypothesis. And the thing that I do to test that hypothesis is just an experiment. The only purpose of that experiment is to give me data. So the only way it's a failure is if I don't do it, because then that does not retrieve any data for me. And I need data in order to be able to help people. So this whole process, putting together these hand raised posts, the goal is not to make X amount of leads, X amount of money. This also connects to something else which helps with authentic self-expression, we'll get to in a moment. But For now, the goal of these hand raise posts is to do nothing but to engage in a process of curiosity, wonder, experimentation, and exploration, and by doing so, collect data that is going to mean we become more and more accurately able to predict outcomes and processes that will reliably and consistently give us outcomes. A lot of that I'm actually handing to you now, but you still need to have an element of grace for yourself when engaging in this process. So how do we build a connection space? A space where it feels not like a slog, slow, painful, but actually feels like something meaningful, enjoyable, something that we can get done with a sense of connection and a sense of space. We don't feel crowded or rushed. Well, we will run experiments and we'll ask ourselves, what would make this more enjoyable? Then you test it and you discover feedback. I know, it's absolutely revolutionary. You specifically aim to experiment with elements that come up when you ask this question and you actually open yourself to receiving answers to this question. How could I make this 2 times more enjoyable, 10 times more enjoyable? What if this was the thing that I looked forward to more than anything else in my workday? And then listen for what comes up as an answer. This will be very personal for you. For example, for me, what comes up is I would enjoy this much more if I actually leaned into my personal values, which is going to actually make it feel exciting. This would be much more enjoyable if I did it with a goal involved, and the goal was something that made it feel exciting. So 10 videos in 3 weeks shipped with certain criteria feels much more enjoyable than I'll try and get leads tomorrow. What do I have to do that? Oh, I have to make a thing and it has to get get leads from people. That makes it less enjoyable. The data shows me, by running experiments after asking this question for myself, what makes it more enjoyable is if I lean into the areas that feel more authentic and that help me feel like I'm articulating things about my values. So let's look at the other elements of what creating connection space to make the process of creating hand raise posts feel fast, enjoyable, and meaningful might be. So, time. When might be the most enjoyable time to set aside and do this? What's the duration of time that's actually going to make this enjoyable? Do I need to shorten the time so it actually feels more exciting and compelling for me? Do I need to lengthen the time because it's feeling stressful and rushed and I just don't have enough time to feel anything but pain while engaging with this? Where do I need to do this? Do I do this in my office or do I go out and about? Do I take myself to the seaside? Do I take myself to my favorite cafe? Do I do this with some other people? So it actually isn't just me on my own trying to squeeze this out of my brain. What do I want to see in front of me? The other week I got a plant from our dining room downstairs, brought it up, put it on my desk, had a lovely time. I could see a plant, something different in my visual sphere that was really satisfying and really enjoyable for me to do. What do you want to smell? I have experimented with using different flavor candles and very much enjoy that. How much space, how do you give yourself the space internally? What are the things that are going to be the biggest distractions? What is going to provide a lot of internal tension because you're relying on willpower to overcome, to deny yourself, to endure the temptation of having certain things in your environment? How can you enjoy things more by just removing those things so you have more space because it's just freedom? Then it's not up to you. Even if you wanted to, it's not an option. That thing is gone and now you have more space and you're so therefore more likely to enjoy the actual process. List the obstacles, like this triangle model. If what I want to do is have space to actually connect with doing my marketing, 3 hand raised posts a week that bring me pre-sold leads, what are the biggest obstacles that come to mind? The 3 biggest obstacles, 4, 1, whatever it is that are going to make this less likely to happen and going to make it less enjoyable. And then get creative and list experiments to help you tackle them. This is the work. So next up, What on earth do I mean by making the skeleton dance? Well, this is a concept that I got from Ben Settle, and the way he uses it is slightly different to how I use it. With him, it's about taking the things about the product that you are offering that feel like they are a skeleton in a closet. Every family, everything, every product has skeletons in its closet. And his take on it is that most people just avoid opening the closet or thinking about the skeleton that's in the closet, or certainly ever talking about the skeleton that's in the closet. And actually what happens is it becomes a cognitive burden, I'm sure an emotional burden as well to some degree, because anything that's being actively avoided means you're having to actively avoid it, which means it's announcing itself to you by your own system's priorities and natural flow of attention that it needs addressing. So his take on it was to make the skeleton dance, bring it out the closet, put it front and center when you talk about your marketing, and offer different perspectives on it. Now, I agree with a caveat. I saw earlier today someone who teaches copywriters put a post up that was basically make the skeleton dance, but he had a slant on it, which was basically take everything that is, make a list of everything about your product that could be perceived as a flaw with it, and then basically find a way to spin it so that you're insisting or claiming that it's a deliberate feature that's in their benefit. I noticed immediately my body tense up and recoil and go cold, because it's just the exact kind of manipulation in this industry of marketing and sales that I detest, that's basically held me back from fully engaging with it with a sense of personal alignment and peace of mind and enjoyment for the whole time that I've kind of been sniffing around and doing this professionally. I detest that you are basically trying to manage other people's perspective and perception in a way that is clearly and deliberately disingenuous, that there's an element of manipulation, spin, cover-up, persuasion. I just detest it. I've always hated that. I feel immediately when someone's doing that to me, and I'm like, excuse me? Do you think that I can't see exactly what's going on, even though I don't feel it's appropriate in this situation to challenge you on it? I detest it. I utterly despise it. Instead, what I prefer doing is leaning into what feels uncomfortable, what feels like a skeleton. For me, that might be the thing that came up earlier when I was saying what I was saying about now hooks. You can use people's wants and frustrations in this short timeline to create effective now hooks. Yeah. Oh no, something in me didn't like that. There's a skeleton there for me, and this is very subjective. What's a skeleton for me isn't a skeleton for someone else, which is actually partly why Pierce posts and using these things all when they work together is even more effective, because you find the best fit clients who are going to align and resonate the most with the product once they've bought it, and therefore get better results, and therefore give you better case studies, testimonials, and therefore make marketing and sales just do itself. Being more yourself with everything like this is the secret, is the shortcut. It's how you make everything feel much easier. Only look for people who resonate with your truth and your authentic set of values, whatever that is. So your personal skeletons that come up as you're doing the work, and you can find these by tuning into your somatic experience, your full sensation, instead of just like being in your head, actually tune into like everything that's going on with your body. And then you'll notice when like little hiccups happen when you're engaging with stuff. Lean into those. Say, what happened there? So I might say, yeah, what made me, why is that a skeleton? What is that skeleton? Yeah, there's something about framing or phrasing hooks and people's attention that I just don't like there. And then I would lean into that, and I would make some space to explore that as a topic. I would personally do it in writing. You might want to do it in talking it out loud, in having a conversation with someone and recording that conversation perhaps. You might want to draw it out. Whatever it is for you, lean into exploring the skeletons And my way of making them dance is to actually discover what you personally find uncomfortable about it, and then actually change your offer, change your solution, add to something, remove that, modify how you communicate about that specific thing, address it so that you're able to say, oh yeah, so next time I do a training on this, for example, I'm going to come to that bit and say, so I noticed in one video that I created as a training resource that whenever I said that now hooks are a way of using people's number one wants and number one frustrations in order to get attention from them, was making me really uncomfortable. So what I did is I went and thought about it. I did some experiments. Here's what I did, and here's actually what I discovered to be true for me. And maybe if you feel uncomfortable about these things to do with social media, this might be really helpful for you, and it may resonate, and it may give you ideas of how to make this align much better for you. You best believe that I'm already excited about doing that after this video. So I would say that this process is how you find your truth to be expressed. This leaning into that experience as you go through your work, as you go through marketing, sales, communicating, training, creating resources, all of that. Paying attention to this kind of thing, to skeletons that you sense under the surface, is how you find what your truth is and how you get better at connecting to yourself and your authentic self and what you have to express. So let's go on to how you actually connect to your mission and how marketing is doing the mission. So here's an example. Here's my marketing mission, or an example of how I might phrase my marketing mission. So the goal of my marketing is to help coaches and experts who feel that marketing and sales is a grind, help them connect to, love, and thrive doing marketing and sales in their business. So, right, yeah, big deal. That sounds like any old mission. What's the big deal? What's new about that? Well, the big deal about this is that we are specifically and categorically talking about the mission of your marketing strategy and of every piece of your marketing that seeks to fulfill that mission. Your mission, your marketing strategy is usually, if you do any kind of business course, how do you get this many leads, this many sales, this much percentage improvement in conversion, and so on. They're all internal statistics. Again, this is something I learned from Mike Killen. Marketing strategy and how we measure success of a marketing strategy is usually all self-benefiting measurements and indicators of performance and progress. What stuff did we get for ourselves that means that the marketing strategy is working? Instead, I'm saying that you need to pick the mission that you have in your business full stop to help the people who you want to help get the outcomes, transformations, changes that you want to help them to get. Just that is the mission of your marketing. So it's not the mission of your marketing to get people to step into your program so that you can do that. The mission of your marketing itself is to help more of that mission happen in and of itself. Let's break this down. So what milestones does someone have to go through in order to experience that outcome that you want, that you are on a mission as a business and therefore in your marketing to help people experience? So for example, if your marketing mission is to coaches and experts who feel that marketing and sales is a grind for them and you want to help them to connect to, love, and thrive doing marketing and sales, what are the milestones that someone would need to reach that would be an indicator of definite progress towards achieving that as an outcome? So, for example, my milestones to help coaches and experts who hate marketing and sales or feel like it's a grind, and I want to help them connect to, love, and thrive doing marketing and sales, what might be some milestones that would be definite indicators of progress towards that? One might be, I look forward to marketing for the first time. I'm actually going to bed excited because my time to do my marketing activities is in the morning between this time and this time, and I go to bed genuinely feeling excited to wake up and get started on doing that. That's a huge milestone. Thriving, it might be a milestone of, wow, I just got my double the number of leads from my email list than I've ever got before. That might be a milestone. I would just list out milestones that indicate that that indicate markers of definite progress towards achieving that mission. And then, once I've got that, I would go through each milestone and ask myself, well, what are the steps that are needed to hit that milestone? For the example that I've just given there, if a milestone is that someone is excited to go to bed, literally because they get to wake up and do their marketing activity for the next day, which they're genuinely excited about, what would need to happen? Let's break that down. What steps need to happen in order for someone to actually experience that milestone as being true for them? And then the steps might be plenty of the things that are present in this particular framework, like, oh, I'm getting attention from my best clients. That's exciting. I find the process fast, enjoyable, meaningful. Wow, okay, yeah. I feel like it's actually an expression of my authentic self-truth. That's exciting. That makes me feel exciting. So those are steps. And then you break down those steps into content resources that you create and then you offer. And these are the things that you put in your hand raised posts as, hey, I just made a thing that helps you do, and then insert the step so that you can, and then insert the milestone. So a hand raised post for me with this mission, this outcome, these milestones and these steps would be, hey, I just created a 45-minute video for coaches and experts who feel that marketing and sales is currently a grind, to help them to, for the first time ever, go to bed excited, specifically because when they wake up, they get to do a marketing activity that feels like an authentic act of self-expression that gets them the attention of their best clients and is actually fast, enjoyable, and meaningful to do. Would you like it? Do this. Comment excitement below, and I'll send it over to you. That is the accumulation of everything that we've been talking about. That's how you bring everything together. You heard me pulling in now hooks, Pierce posts. I would prepare to actually deliver on this promise by having everything in its place, my mise en place, give myself grace so it's not like a failure, pass-fail thing. It's just I wonder what will happen. It's an experiment to collect data. Giving myself the space that will actually give me experiments on how I could enjoy this. Leaning into skeletons so that I can make them dance, so I actually feel like I'm actually getting to do this, not having to do this, because I'm discovering things about myself and the people who I will most resonate with working with, and the things that people I most enjoy working with will also resonate with to some degree, for us to be just super out of our brains excited that we've discovered each other and get to work together. And then I've put it all together as that being the purpose of my marketing strategy, is to create hand raised posts that let people take these steps with the resources that I'm creating, that will help them to achieve the milestones, that will help them to achieve the mission that I'm on a mission to help people achieve, both with my actual back-end offers and also with my marketing itself. I really like a chap who I follow called Taki Moore. Highly recommend checking him out. In one interview that I listened to with him, he talks about why he sees marketing as being no different from delivering for clients, where you put your best stuff out there, because your marketing should, as a result of you doing things like this, which is very linked to how he recommends doing marketing and seeing marketing itself, your marketing will help far more people than your paid products, services, programs will ever be able to help. You'll be able to deliver more of the outcomes that are your mission of having this company in the first place by aligning your marketing with that mission than if your marketing's mission is to just get you leads, clicks, attention, sales. I love that whole approach. It makes me very, very excited, and it all ties together in a very, very satisfying way. A lot of this stuff overlaps with itself. I hope you agree. I hope that's been very useful. I'm going to be creating actual templates, tools. I'm probably going to be experimenting with creating custom AI tools, custom GPTs and so on, that actually help you to do the actions and projects required in this process in a way that's faster, easier, more enjoyable. So let me know if you have any particular requests. Otherwise, keep an eye out for that.